Hey you, if you're looking for something nice to listen to while working, driving, chilling, exercising, or whatever, then you have come to the right place. I have fun and in depth conversations with independent artists from a wide variety of musical genres, and you're about to listen to one right now. So if you like what you hear, then please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell for further notifications of my upcoming podcasts. And now, on with the show. My guest for today is a rock and roll legend that has truly been through it all in the Indian independent music scene, and his name is Ananda Sen. Hailing from Kolkata and now based in Goa, Ananda began his musical journey in 2004 with the Supersonics, a rock band that made waves in the Indian music scene with their landmark releases Maybe Baking and Heads Up. However, the band's tenure was cut short by a dramatic and much publicized breakup that left Ananda adrift. After a short stint with his band The Ritornellos and a complete break from music that lasted for many years, Ananda Sen returned as a solo artist in 2025 with his album Pages from the Past, a tender, beautiful, and deeply personal work of art that also has the bittersweet legacy of being the last album worked on by legendary BBC sound engineer Miti Adhikari before his untimely passing. As Ananda prepares to introduce himself to a whole new generation of fans with upcoming performances in two of the biggest music festivals in India, that would be Bandland and Lollapalooza, Ananda sat down with me to talk about a whole host of topics that include his ups and downs with the Supersonics and the Ritornellos, his raw and honest opinions on the music business and how it treats independent musicians, the complex interpersonal dynamics of being in a band, what Miti Adhikari truly meant to him, and so much more. So, without further ado, here's me with Ananda Sen. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on. So, what's up with you? How's life treating you these days?
It's busy with work, mainly. I teach English through the week, and actually, that's pretty much what I do mainly. But, it's busy. Life between work, music, it's hard to juggle. Um, but yeah, busy.
So, in all of these like gig announcements, whenever they write about you, you are this Kolkata rock and roll legend. But I think it's fair to say that, according to my research at least, like you are an English teacher who just so happens to play music on the side at this point.
That's a hard one to put. I mean, I've been playing music way, way longer than teaching English. I've only been teaching English for the last couple of years. I've been a rock and roll musician since I was 16. I'm 43 now. But for the last 8 years till last August, I hadn't played a gig and I'd stopped playing music. So, now life is a little different. So I guess currently you can say I'm an English teacher who occasionally gets out and plays some rock and roll.
Yeah, but I think you're also doing something else that's really really wholesome and fascinating to me. Like apparently you're teaching music to these kids of this NGO called Future Hope. Am I correct?
Yes, I used to do that actually. I've stopped doing that since January, but yeah, I did that for almost 10 years. Yes. So yeah, till January I was doing that and now I've stopped doing that, but there's just too many things to juggle around really right now in life. It took me a while to finish my album mainly because, well, it was kind of done for, just the last finishing bit, just getting the time to do it was hard and juggling three things was getting too much for me. So yeah, but I did that for a bit too, yeah.
Yeah, but what was it like teaching those kids?
I mean, it's great, we kind of forget that everyone's very self-involved with their lives and we all think our problems are the biggest on the planet. Till you actually on a day-to-day, interact with children who have nothing and come from hells that you can't imagine. And it was quite a humbling and reality check kind of perspective, you know. And the power of music is that it's universal and that it can get you joy. It always gives, doesn't take. And to be able to do that for kids who had nothing, and I see a lot of musicians around moaning and groaning and whatever, but these kids have way more to moan and groan about, and They played music with a smile, and it was really good, super fulfilling. For the longest time, I would say that job saved me.
Oh, that's lovely, man. And you're right. I mean, we tend to take all of those things for granted, you know. I mean, it's almost like this kind of tunnel vision where you're only focused on the things that you're doing, but when you see someone who is worse off than you are, it really puts things into perspective, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And when I started working there, it was really, I was at the height of the Supersonics. It's very easy to get lost in a lot of that stuff. Your egos go unchecked sometimes. But that was pretty grounding. And I think, like I said, kept everything real. And, reminded me of, why I started playing music and the reasons I started playing music, and seeing a kid move through, progress with the learning of an instrument. Because every time, the breakthroughs when you learn an instrument, and you see those breakthroughs in them, not only is it motivating, but it's also like magic, right? Like, you couldn't do this last month, now you can, and to see that motivating kids with horrendous lives and filling their mind with things other than their horrendous life, and also going through all of that again, it was amazing. It's like learning, seeing, doing the whole process again.
So, you're gonna come back with a bang because you are not only booked for Bandland, one of Bangalore's premier festivals at this point, but you're also booked for Lollapalooza India next year. So, what was your reaction when you got those two gigs?
I mean i mean to me it's no big deal. Okay, I won't lie. I played enough festivals, and it's okay. I mean, it's great. It's nice to know that people are still interested in my music, especially since it's English, it's rock and roll, it's not pop or commercial stuff. And more importantly, I've been gone for 8 years. I'm not even really on social media. So um, I just released the album, and then everyone just started calling saying, please play. And I said, sure, okay. I mean, till mm, till last June, I was pretty adamant I wasn't going to play again. I was pretty much done gigging and all, but a couple of things happened, and the stars kind of aligned, and everything was kind of handed to me. Um, and I didn't have any reason to say no anymore. So yeah, but I'm excited. I just played this gig in Bombay in August, and there were a whole bunch of kids who came down, and they were like, we never got to see you in the Supersonics, and um, we're really glad we get to see you now. Because um, they were just really young when I was last playing. The Supersonics were 10, 11 years back. So, guys who are now 24, 25, they couldn't even get into the gigs back then. So, in a way, I'm glad, and I am playing a lot of Supersonic stuff. So, I'm excited to play it for the younger generation of guys. I'm not so sure I'm aligned to the current music tastes, but there seems to be enough people who like the sort of music still, and that's great.
Yeah, and this is why I'm so excited to see you get these gigs and so excited to see you live because, one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to you right now is because, so much of the stuff that you did and, so much of the stuff that people I know today are influenced by, they actually happened, way before my time as a fan of independent music. Like, I started going to gigs at around 2014. And I think only a year later, Supersonics had its breakup, if I'm not wrong. So, it really
Yeah.
excites me to know that there will be like an entirely new audience that will get to see you, and maybe if they are familiar with all the hype that was around you back in the day, they will see why it was justified.
We can hope so. It's either that or bottles thrown at you. So
No, no. With the price of drinks these days, I don't think anybody will part with their bottles or their
that's
glasses or anything
true.
like that.
That's true. I'm not sure. Does Lolla and Bandland and all they serve booze? I'm not even sure. I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they kind of have to justify the prices. I won't lie to
Right.
you, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm surprised to hear you talk like this. It seems like you've been like totally disconnected from what goes on in the independent music scene. Like for like how long have you been away, and why have you been away for so long?
Yeah, I have. I have been. I've when well, it's been 8 years. I told you just since I played a gig, like August, the Bombay gig I just played. That was my first gig in 8 years. No man, it was just jaded, disillusioned. You know, like I said, I've been doing this since I was 16. I'm 43 now. Um, you know, I started when in Calcutta. It was mainly a cover band scene, and for me, it was a revolt against that initially, mainly because I'd been playing in cover bands since I was 16, and by the time I was 20, I'd already written close to 100 songs, but I had no outlet for it, and you know, people looked down at me, on me because I was wanting to do my own music. They're like, oh, who's this punk kid who wants to make his own music, Go learn how to play the solo of Hotel California and then write your own songs. So it's a lot of that shit. So, um, and the battle band of the seniors division back then in Cal. And, you know, I think what they call Skinny Alley, yeah, they released an album just before us of original material, and that was done through a big label because Amit Datta is a guitar institution in Cal. So they had a label deal, but it was a impossible dream for a bunch of 20-year-old kids back then to do that. But I was kind of dogged about it, and truth be told, suddenly, people started waking up to the fact that you can only ape someone for so long, but if you really want to do something artistically, you have to make something of your own. And I think that mentality started catching on, and a lot of things happened. It included having to be shortchanged by a label that pretty much stole our first album and stole my work. And yeah, I mean, it's never been easy. So it's all an uphill battle. Not to mention playing in a real band where everyone's invested in it as their life choice and career of choice. It's like another marriage, and it's four people. When you're young, things get heated, and everyone's extra passionate and maybe extra headstrong. And yeah, it was, interpersonal stuff, along with the fact that there's really no opportunity and making a living off it was really hard. There's a lot of pressure, I mean, throughout, and I think youth managed to carry us through that, to keep doing it. But I think after the Supersonics and after the Ritornellos, I kind of got done with the fact that I'd have to keep putting my life in the hands of three, four, five other people, and if it's one guy who fucks up, then everyone goes down. So um, it was taking a toll on me. Especially, I felt that since I'm writing the songs, I'm singing the songs, I'm playing guitar on it, the amount of work I was putting in was exponentially much more than the others, and I couldn't give my time to anything else. And each time the bands broke up or whatever shit happened, I felt the hit of it hardest. So, I just kind of decided I'd done it from 16 to around 36, and I thought, maybe I need to move away for a bit. And I was done with city life also, so I moved to Goa before the pandemic, and I went into hermit mode for 8 years. Yeah, and so I'm really detached. I have no idea who the bands are, what festivals are on. Now I ask everyone around me what's going on, really. So, yeah.
Okay, okay. I can totally understand that. And it's something that not a lot of people talk about. A lot of people mythologize bands and like being in a band setting, but not a lot of people talk about like the time management and the interpersonal relationships and how it gets to the point where it feels like, why bother with a band? I'll just write all the music on my own and hire some session musicians and we'll play whenever we get a gig or record whenever we get a chance.
Well, that's that, but I've never thought of playing with sessions musicians. Even with this band, that I know they all play in other bands, but my thing was that I want 100% commitment, and this is not like hands, in Calcutta, anyone who's backing up the lead singer is called a hand. It's a derogatory, horrendous term, and you can tell in the music because the music isn't ensemble music because the band isn't playing from their heart. They're just doing it for some money. And I have been thoroughly against it. In fact, the only way I was going to play again was if I had a real band with the right guys. And right now I have the right guys because they're extremely committed, they're hardworking, they're professional, they love the music, and we're equals. I actually fought to change the band name. It was Sen because of a lack of anything, but I don't even really believe in having my name as the band name. It's a little stupid to me, frankly, but I think they're going to use it to sell tickets and whatever. So I can't fight it. I can't use the Supersonics. So
Yeah, but what would you have named the band if not Sen? What were some of the ideas going around?
no, no, none. That's the other thing is that I never reached that stage. I think everyone just the album was put under San, and mainly because my name's Anundo and it's spelled Ananda, and trying to tell people how to pronounce that is a real hassle. So I just thought let's just keep it simple. There's no stage name or anything like that. I can't. I don't have any of that shit either. And it just happened. I think a lot of people, if I started a new band, you know, it'd be very hard for people organizing it to, let people know, oh, it's the guy from the Supersonics or the guy from the Ritornellos, and so this is just easier. People know it's me.
How did it feel to be back on stage in that gig in Mumbai after such a long time?
Oh, it's really nice, man. It was weird for me to not play on a stage for so long, and truth is, I had forgotten it. And but as amazing as it was, it just felt like home after the first song or two. I mean, tech has come a long way with monitoring and sound, and you know I was like, wow. Everyone was like, oh, antisocial shit sound, and then I was like, man, this sounds amazing. You guys are spoiled. It was like in-ear monitors and everything. I was like, it's fine, man. Yeah, I played well, and you know you just made do with what you got. um, but it was good. A lot of familiar faces landed up at the gig. Guys used to come, for all the old Supersonics gigs. So, everyone was singing along. It just felt like the old times. I think a lot of people really liked the album, and it was good to see some people sing along to the songs from the album. I didn't even really have a launch release, nothing. I made an Instagram page, I think the day before I released the album and released it. But, in spite of it being so low key, it's managed to get to the people who I think would appreciate this kind of music. And it was good, like having them all come. We played really late on a Thursday night. I think we started at 12. And that place is in Lower Parel, which is really far, man, at least from, where people usually hang out. And it was raining, people made the effort, tons of people came. It was great. And, I was like, yeah, I can do this again, mate. I have the right guys to play with. I think for me, that's the most important thing, to play with the right people. And with the Supersonics, we were all like, we've known each other since we are like 16, and you can't really replace that sort of thing because we grew up together. But this is the next best thing, and I can tell you something, that these guys are in a lot more ways way more professional than even I was when I was young. At that time, you're not really thinking of being professional. We're playing a rock and roll band, so we're living the life. So um, I think all of that comes much later, and we had to do that stuff at some point. Our early gigs, there's some horrific gigs where we were so hammered, everyone's playing different songs on stage and shit like that, and we obviously had to clean our act up a bit. But these guys currently are super pro, super, on it. And the good normal guys, they don't have normal problems.
Okay, lovely. I'm so happy to hear that. So, for this podcast, I'd like to go through your career in chronological order leading up to your latest album, which is Pages from the Past. So, I'd like to start with this. All those years ago, how did the Supersonics start? Tell me how the Supersonics came into being.
So, before the Supersonics, I start. This is a long story. Have you heard of this pub called Someplace Else in Calcutta?
I've never been to Calcutta, so no.
Okay. So it was at one point in India, there were very few live music venues, okay, and someplace else was one of the few in the country, okay. There was like not just Jazz by the Way in Mumbai and a couple, but it's the one for Calcutta. And a lot of, the old time musicians. Have you heard of this Indian band called High? Um, with their seven.
Unfortunately, not. I'm a filthy millennial.
Ah, okay. Well, there were India's best rock and roll band in my books. Okay, their songwriter Dilip Balakrishnan is an amazing songwriter, amazing musicians, and so members of ex-members from High, because Dilip died of cancer, and I don't know if you've heard of Nanda and Bakshi, but a lot of really top musicians were playing in this pub called Someplace Else, and they'd have bands every night. They'd have a band, and then the place would become like a nightclub after that. But you had the whole band thing going, and I used to go there since I was 16, and it was in a five-star hotel, and I was underage, so I'd have to talk my way in. And I used to go there, and, because at that time that was the only live music I'd ever seen. We didn't have Green Day coming across and playing in India. There were bands, no nothing, coming down international, and that was the only place. And I was playing guitar, and I had a few school bands and stuff like that. And one day I was just chatting shit over there, saying, "Oh, I can play and all that," and I was just chatting shit. I had no band. And then I think a week later, he's like, "Oh, we're holding auditions. We're finally opening up someplace else to younger bands. Come and audition next week." So I had 1 week to hook up a band. And that's when I kind of called Nandan Bakshi, was the drummer of High, and he was playing, I think. He had a student called Avinash, and it so happened Avinash's dad, my dad's a cardiologist, so Avinash's dad was my dad's patient, and he landed up with his dad, and we found out that our dads knew each other, and that's how I met Avinash from the Supersonics, and that was our first band sound check, and it was a cover band, and we play mainly 60s, 70s rock and roll. And Nitin also played in that band for a bit, and then every one of us, all of us went to college and stuff like that, and that band broke up. And then I came back to play music, and I wanted to play my own songs. And the Supersonics was basically half of Soundcheck, and Rohan used to play in another cover band called Cognac, and me and Rohan started hanging out when I came back, and we used to keep talking about doing our own music, and I was writing, and so he was really interested. So that's basically how the band started. It was Literally four guys tired of playing covers. I'd known them. We'd been in our own cover band since we were 16. We were playing at someplace else every Monday because we won the audition, as they called it. And so we learned how to play at someplace else. And the Supersonics was literally just a transformation of that, really, because most of those members were in soundcheck. And yeah, that's how the Supersonics started. There were a few other bands in between with various other musicians. I had a band with Miti Adhikari, I don't know if you know him, heard of him. We were in a band in Cal. And in fact, that was the band that just before the Supersonics, and I'd actually brought a couple of the songs that were later done with the Supersonics there. But again, we just couldn't get it together. I think some people wanted to do covers, some weren't interested in doing original music, some didn't see any point in it. It's a very different time at that point of time to say you want to do your own music. But like I said, people thought, who the fuck are you, man, to think you can do your own music? So it was a different time and there was a different attitude towards it. But I think, yeah, and that's how the Supersonics happened. And really, for the first 4 years, for the first 9 months, we just rehearsed every day. We just sat and played in my parents' room, the house, in my bedroom, every day for hours. And again, that's the thing. You can't really do that now because everyone has a job or something or other bands. And back then, we were in college still and really wanted to make this our only thing. And all four of us were in it like that. And it meant that, everyone invested the time, effort, and life actually to it. And I don't think really ensemble band music can happen without that. You can't just say, well, you play good guitar and you play good drums and you sing all right, and put them all together and be like, you're a band. It doesn't work like that. You have to learn how to read people. You need to understand where musically the other's coming from, and there's a bit of intuition that's required. And the comfort of writing music together is also something that's not really, a thing of comfort, but actually doing it for many hours, like any skill. You've got to put hours together, which we did. And I think more than anything, we were just a product of well rehearsed and a band that played a lot together. We did that all the time. Afternoon, morning till night, pretty much, for a long time. And then, wow, it's a long time back. I have to remember this shit. All right, and then I think Saregama were doing this. They were taking, I think, 10 bands from each city, one song, and releasing it as some compilation thing. And that's when we got to record. We recorded some demos and shit, but we'd never been in a studio really and had no idea. They were horrible, and we were at the mercy of an engineer who had no idea about our kind of music or really Western music per se. So it was badly mixed, badly recorded, but they were demos, and we used those demos to kind of get on the CD, and then we had In Memory Of on that. And then I think Saregama, I said that they want to do an album with us, or we said we wanted to do a whole album. I can't remember if we approached them or they approached us. But either way, what ensued was basically absolute theft, because they made us sign these contracts where we signed the rights to the songs, the album, and they took our gig money. Till date, I haven't received a rupee of royalty, anything. They changed the album cover on Spotify, Apple Music. It's not tagged properly. And I've sent them legal notices, so I'm on a war with them. But basically, they stole that album from us, including some of our gig money for a year, for 2 lakhs. Not 2 lakhs, 1 lakh, and 9 days of studio time. That's how much we sold the album for. And that 1 lakh went to Miti, who produced it. And we got 9 days of studio time. And for that, they took the rights to everything forever and took 1 year's worth of gig money from us. That's what you had to do to get an album out. And then they, I think, made 2,000 CDs, I think, which we had to sell and then give them part of that. So, yeah, and when that came out, though, things changed pretty much overnight. Um, and we were already getting pretty big in our city, but because we were in Calcutta, it was very hard to move out and play gigs outside. So that started opening up for us, and then everything changed. But then we did a UK tour after that, and then we broke up after that. And then I went off to Glasgow to study audio engineering. And then when I came back, there was like Weekenders and all these festivals had just started, and the whole scene had completely changed. And when we reunited at that time, luckily we were at the top of the hill at that point and got to play all the big festivals, saw the growth and birth of the music scene, and it was very different from the years preceding that, you know. So, yeah, kind of to sum it up.
Okay, okay, and I'm really sad to hear the circumstances behind the first album, because it seemed like such a big deal, but you didn't get any, like, very little, if any, of the rewards from that. But did that at least, like, show you what to watch out for when making another deal like that? Did that at least give you the awareness and the foreknowledge to avoid circumstances like that in the future, like before we get into the second album, of course? So
Right.
was it a
So,
learning
yeah,
experience at least?
well, for sure. Well, so for starters, okay, tech, when we did maybe baking, okay, tech was nowhere where it is right now. Okay, you
Hmm.
wanted to record, you needed to get into a studio, okay, and record. There's no way, today everyone, I recorded this whole album, my new one, pretty much at home, okay. So just that hurdle of having to cough up the money for studio time, okay, that in itself was a big hurdle which left you with very limited options. If you wanted to record your music, you either paid for it yourself or got someone to pay for it for you. And if I have to look back, I wouldn't do anything differently, at least when it comes to maybe baking, because we had no other options. We didn't have a lack amongst us to, you know, go and spend recording an album. We didn't have the money to print the CDs. We didn't have the distribution network to put those CDs in shops. Today you can do it. Why today? By the time we did Heads Up, the whole scene had changed. So, you know, all the issues that we faced back then are not issues that exist anymore for musicians. So if I had to go back and do it again, I'd probably have to do it exactly the same way and be cheated again, because there was no other alternative. It was either that or nothing. And the reality is, yes, our government has stolen the album from us. Yes, they haven't paid us a rupee of royalty, and it's theft. And anywhere in the world, they would be shut down and sued, and I would be a millionaire just by suing them. But the reality is that at that time, there was no one else, and if that album hadn't come out, I wouldn't have been able to make the second one or have the life that I dreamed of having, as a working musician. And so, I have to weigh it up every once in a while, as that's the cost, but maybe it is. I don't know. Yeah, but I won't. There was no other option. At the time when we got the contract, every lawyer said you have to be insane to sign it. And my thing was like, well, then what's the option? Because no one's offering us a contract, no one's offering us any money. How are we going to get this money to do this? So either we take this or we don't. If we take it, we get an album out. And at that time, we thought they would be honest, at least about paying us our royalties, if it ever went up digitally, that we'd be credited and the proper album artwork is there and all of that. We signed huge contracts essentially, but so we decided to do it in spite of being told not to. And looking back, I don't really regret signing it, mainly because there was no option. But it's horrible to have your work stolen from you, and there's that also. So
Yeah. I think that's a very understandable way of looking at it, and hindsight is always 2020. But just to cheer
yeah.
things up a bit, I'd like to take you back to a particular memory during that album, and that memory involves orange clown jumpsuits. And by that, I'm talking about the In Memory of music video. So, what is your strongest memory of filming that music video for the song In Memory of?
There's a lot. For starters, I broke the band up over that. I was pitched this idea for this, and I was totally against it. And we had a huge band fight, and the band broke up. And this was really at the cusp of, you know, getting things actually happening. And I was like, I really hated it. I still hate it. I don't hate it as much as some of the other ones because we've got some. I think all the Supersonics music videos should be burnt and they don't should never exist. And the one that
Okay.
came after worse, if it's possible, but really bad. Uh, we all looked miserable because we were miserable in it. And I remember we had a huge fight, and it was way more outrageous. And I think the guys doing it would try to placate us a bit, me especially. And finally, I caved, and in hindsight, everyone was just trying to do their best. It wasn't the best idea, but truth be told, I didn't have a better idea. So, I all I could do was complain, which I did wholeheartedly. But it was okay, it was again a time before really YouTube and stuff. So it was a video that was on TV, and so all family and stuff were like, "Oh, you're on TV, you're famous," and but then you look like an idiot on TV, and then you're like, "Please don't watch it." So that was a double-edged sword of sorts. So yeah, I'm not a fan of any of those videos. I never tell anyone our music videos.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So, but after all that, after the process of baby baking and after the first breakup and the reunion, what were the circumstances of writing and recording Heads Up? Where was your collective headspace at while making that album?
So after Maybe Baking, we did a UK tour, and then we basically broke up on the UK tour. I mean, we just played the gigs. We never really met each other outside the gigs, and it was really a rough time. And then we came back, and I think we played a couple more gigs, and we broke up. And then I went off to Glasgow for a year, and then I went to New York for a bit after that. And Glasgow was a great eye opener for me, mainly because in Glasgow at that time there were 500 gigs a week at any given point of time, and there was a ton of new music and tons of original music, which was completely different from India at that point of time. And I had access to a studio, and then I learned how to use and work the studio. And so I started recording demos, in those studios of mine. And by the time, I was in New York, I think me and Rohan had a reconciliatory conversation and spoke about getting the band back and all of that. Everyone wanted to do it. And it felt like we'd moved past a lot of the issues, interpersonal issues. So I came back, and Heads Up's a way more positive album because of that, I think. And I'm really proud of that because, maybe Baking Saregama studio was shit. They had an O1V desk we recorded through. They didn't have any equipment, don't, we recorded 11 songs in 9 days. You have to remember we were amateurs. We'd never really been in a studio, and Miti really got that together for us. He was such a pro, and you know, he took care of all the other shit and just said play, and made that the focus. And Maybe Baking is very much a performance album. Everything's recorded live. They're pretty much takes from top to bottom, bashed out maybe 3 4 times, and we just pick the best take and work on that. And it was done very quick, very spontaneous, and but the recording quality isn't great at all. By the time we reached Heads Up, obviously now we had Red Bull, and they were amazing. They just gave us a shit ton of money and said, just make the album that you want to make. And that allowed us, we had a month of studio time, we had Miti, I could get it mastered in the UK, and we had another music video, which is the worst music video ever made by man. And but it was paid for, and it was a completely different ball game from maybe one where we could really try out stuff in the studio, which we never had the privilege to do before. So a lot of the harmonies and stuff, because I was pretty much the only singer in the Supersonics, and you couldn't really work that stuff out in a live scenario, but in the studio we could, and it was great. We're trying to do Beach Boys harmonies, crazy stuff, and we had the time and resources to be able to do it. And at the end of the day, I'm really proud of that album. I know a lot of people feel maybe Baking's the album, but for me, it's always been Heads Up. I think it's a way better written album. I think it's a better played album, better recorded album. Yeah, I think it's one that's maybe not as catchy and immediate as maybe Baking, and you got to hear it a few times, but I think it's got a lot more in it for repeated listens. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see and hear that, and I'm happy to hear that that album was recorded in much better circumstances. But
Yeah,
unfortunately,
in fact,
after
it was the
sorry,
opposite.
go ahead.
It was the opposite of what Sarigama. If Sarigama's the worst, Red Bull were the best. They didn't even want a logo anywhere. Nothing. It was just do it. Um, that's a lot. To put into an English rock band in India. Red Bull were amazing. They had a great team working with them. They were all music lovers, and you see, to build a scene, it's not just the band. You need a good band, you need a good promoter, you need good artists doing the artwork, you need good journalists covering the music. You have to have an infrastructure. You can't just have one. And it felt like that was the time when, everything was coming together. You had good writers, you had good musicians, the venues were getting better, there were band managers, there were labels, the venues were getting better, the festivals were getting better, everything was just going up, and it was nice to be on top of that wave, seeing that from the top, because we'd struggled throughout till then.
Right. You say everything was getting better, but unfortunately, as history tells us, the Supersonics broke up. So why was the writing on the wall? When was the writing on the wall, and why did it happen, despite you yourself saying that things were looking up for you guys?
The Supersonics were breaking up. We broke up the first week we started the band, and we would break up maybe every alternate week. Okay, it was always really, really explosive. Their four guys were completely different in that band, um, completely different personalities, and it was always a ticking time bomb. It ended you know, right after maybe baking, and actually we ended right after Heads Up. Um, so it wasn't like a shock, it was shocking that we managed to survive or make it work that long. I think that was the thing. And like I said, we all lived under that fear that, oh, one day this one's going to quit, one day that one's going to quit. And it was always living in this insecure, unstable life and world. Um, yeah, it gets the better of you. And, yes, we were doing really well and all of that by the time we broke up the second time. But I think if interpersonally, when you're doing something as, deep as making music together, and the interpersonal relationships are so fucked that, maybe you don't want to be in the same room as the other person or something, then you can't make the music, and then you can't do. Basically, the reason why we were doing all of this suddenly started becoming irrelevant, because that wasn't there anymore. And I think there have been combinations of drama between each band member, at some point or the other. And I mean, when people get divorced, they say, personal differences. That's the reason. I would probably have to say the same thing, I guess. Um, I will also say, though, that success is a double-edged sword, and some people change with it. And I don't want to take names, but if you can't stay humble and don't know where you came from, and you lose track of that, well, all this shit can take over, and egos are fragile, so. Okay.
So, before
Yeah.
we get into your next band, the Ritornellos, I think you'll get a kick out of this. I'd like to read something to you. This is a review of one of your early gigs, a Supersonics gig in Bangalore, written by Varun Rajiv from whatsthescene.com. I think you'll get a kick out of it. I found this in my research, okay? I'll just read it to you verbatim. Rohan, of course, has always looked like Nosferatu teasing a guitar, while drummer Avinash and bassist Nitin fit snugly. But the man to watch is frontman Ananda Sen. He is electrifying. He looks like an anorexic John Reyes, which, come to think of it, a large portion of Kolkata does, in brackets, ha 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 ha, and is 100% coiled tension bound by the limited stage, swaying and writhing in place while barely cracking a smile, ever threatening to break free and pounce at the closest table, or at least pinch the beer.
Yeah, sounds about right. Like I said, that's a time when people actually could write. Have you seen some of the music journalism right now? It's not even human written. There's not. That's good writing. At least it's engaging. Nowadays, I can't even find good music journalism. I think people got lazy with AI.
I think that is like a great legacy statement for the Supersonics to be remembered by. I hope that guy gets a Pulitzer or something. So next, your band after the Supersonics was, of course, the Ritornellos. Tell me about how that band came together.
So the Supersonics broke up, and I was I had a decision to make at that point of time, which was, well, I replace on whoever the exiting member of the Supersonics was at the time, and get a replacement and carry on as next, because I was very much hell bent on making the first album right after Heads Up, because there was such a long gap between maybe Baking and Heads Up. But since the band imploded pretty much post album to launch tour, I was faced with the decision to either replace the members in the Supersonics that weren't working out and go on as the Supersonics, or rebrand it, and do something else. And when we started the Supersonics, there was one deal which we had, was that it's either the four of us, none of us, and I think it was very important. It still is to me that, you don't have the Beatles with Keith Richards on guitar, okay, after halfway through, I mean, that's not the Beatles then, So it was a new band, but Avinash was still there, okay, the drummer from the Supersonics. And I decided to go with a couple of younger guys, in the music scene. Unfortunately, man, again, I don't think Bengalis are cut out for rock and roll. So, it was hell.
Somebody's going to
There's a
quote
lot
you
of
on
unprofessionalism there.
that.
I've sworn I'm not playing in a band with another Bengali. One's bad enough. So yeah, it just became really a messed up scene, and you know, some could say it was like a rebound band. Side, it sounds like that. It's the rebound relationship. But the initial lineup of the Ritornellos was really good, and then one guy went off the edge and, with mental health issues, and the band pretty much was a free fall pretty much after that, and yeah, that didn't survive, and I think a combination of substances and unprofessionalism led to the early demise of that. And um, I got really pissed off with the scene and being in a band after that, and I was done. I just felt like I was wasting my time, and that was it. And I wish I could say more about the Ritornellos, but there's not much to say because it was just around for like a year of which maybe 4 months was already just us rehearsing, and then before it really took off, it exploded. You yeah, I mean, some people are cut out for this life, some aren't. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be really proficient at your instrument. It's also a headspace thing and how you approach it. It's very easy to you know blend the lines between rock and roll fantasy and rock and roll life. And if you believe in one too much, you can fall off deep end. So some people can hack it, some can't. There were some people in that band that couldn't hack it, and yeah, that was that.
Okay, and I agree with you on the fact that the Ritornellos didn't really get too much time in the sun. In fact, like in all my research, I could only find like one video of one song of you guys performing. So, did you guys like record anything that I may have not found or anything like that?
Well, a couple of songs from pages from the past are basically they were demo tracks that I had recorded with the Ritornellos. In fact, they're there playing on the songs. So there are three songs I think from the album which was supposed to be the Ritornellos album and has them playing on it. I mean, since they were early scratches and I've added and taken out stuff since, but the essence of it is the Ritornellos, yeah. We did one music video for one track. Um, yeah, well, that album was always almost halfway through, and then that got done. And I used a lot of the stuff from that for this one. Like I said, pages from the past, it's been done really for a long time. It's just really little things and mastering and stuff, but it was a done album. It's been more or less complete like 4 years back. I was just sitting on it. I had no intention of releasing it. I didn't want to, get back into this life again. I was really jaded about playing in a band, and I was really just doing it as a thing me and Miti used to do, for fun. And really, that album is just me and him really sitting in. He was really thinking that I get back to playing, really, right till his last days practically. He was pushing for it. A big reason for me playing again is him. I wouldn't have probably if he didn't go.
So, getting to your most recent album, Pages from the Past, um, when I listen to it and when I read the lyrics, it really feels like a culmination of everything that's been going on with you musically up to this point. And I will tell you the two songs that I resonated with the most. The first one was Way Too Many Complications, and just listening to it and reading the lyrics, it kind of feels like I'm listening to your outlook on what you want to be as a musician. So, like, am I on the key there about that first song?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and the second one, let me just bring it up here. Um, The second song is Give It All Away. And when I read the lyrics, especially, like for example, you gave us the power to levitate. You'd better tell me how it was. Then you turned off the lights and walked away. You better tell me how it was. I mean, I don't know the circumstances of writing that song, but listening to it after Miti's passing, it feels kind of spooky to me to hear that, because it kind of feels like it could be applied to Miti leaving us. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Well, this funny thing is that was his favorite song on the album. Uh, yeah, well, it's about a relationship ending, and I always, you're right. The album's called Pages from the Past because really all the songs are really snapshots of a point of my life. And Give It All Away is about, a relationship ending, um, and yeah, a meaningful relationship ending after a while. And the way the words are always written is that I always like songs where as a listener you can put your interpretation of words and make it about you, and then the song becomes yours. And even though all the songs are about me, I've written them in a way where, yeah, that people can put themselves into it and identify with things written and said in them. The words are really important to me, man. So I take a lot of time. For me, that's probably what takes the most amount of time. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of really weird stuff in regards to this album and Niti. At the end, the album was played for the first time publicly at a listening session the day before Miti died, and the doctors had said that he wasn't even going to make it, and the fact that he lived through that and died the next day, yeah, and right till the end, he was really thinking about the album coming out. You know, he really believed in me. I don't know why. Um, he'd seen the best of the best, but he really thought my music had something in it, and he believed in the album way more than I did. I think I'm by nature and with time, I become more cynical and jaded, and my idea of what this album would be at this time in India was that, well, no one really listens to this sort of stuff. This is a lot of guitar music and a lot of words, and that's not really what contemporary music is now. And obviously living under a rock for 8 years, I I discounted the fact that there are people like me and people my generation at least who still listen to that. And Miti was very thing that I should get it out, and I was wrong about it. And really, you know, I wouldn't have done it, I wouldn't have released it and finished it if it wasn't for him. So, you know, last year he really got on me, and I was like, okay. And I've had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, so it, it's been a crazy year. And you know, if it wasn't for him, I would have never released this album. It would have been done, but I won't have released it. I'm also, not, I don't have that ambition anymore, I guess. I don't want to make it. I don't want to be famous. I couldn't give a fuck about anything, frankly speaking. As long as I can sit and make my music, someone pays me to do it, that's great. But I've also given up on that dream because that just leads to bitterness. And, you just got to do what you have to do in this world to survive. And, you know, I I don't have this thing that if whatever shit I make needs to be released. There's a whole bunch of songs I have that are recorded that aren't released. This was going to be a double album, in fact, most of which
Oh,
is stuck on Miti's on his computer. I don't know, it's probably lost because no one has the password and all for all of his computer and stuff. But yeah, so there's actually another album completed pretty much. There are another 5 songs which didn't make it to this. Because I wanted to do a double album and he was like, man, no one has the patience for it. And he's right. And he said, don't, you know, give it all in one shot, do two. So so then we really hacked it down to the 8 that made it. 8 or 9, I can't remember, whatever. Um, so yeah, I mean, going forward for me, that's going to be, ever since maybe baking. Miti's been the guy who's done all my music, and frankly speaking, I haven't had to worry about that, but I worry about that right now a lot going forward. The way we worked, it took many years of working together to get there, and just his knowledge is so so vast, and he's really all the music I make and where I come from, he's literally recorded those guys, all the guys I like, I'm inspired by him, so he knows exactly where I'm coming from. And I have to say that nowadays everything sounds really slick, but to me, a record shouldn't sound slick. It should sound like have its own character. One of my favorite Stones albums, is Exile on Main Street, and that's recorded literally in a basement in a chateau in France in a truck, and it sounds sonically horrible, but just the way the performance and the way it's made gives it a sound which, frankly speaking, to me is amazing. And I'm more into that. I don't want clarity at 2.7 kilohertz, and when you start listening to music like that, you stop feeling it. It's not science. You're chasing emotion here, and you're using sound as textures and words as definition, and rhythm comes from everything. That's why I don't like a click track. I'm really opposed to having the machines on a stage. For me, a live performance should be completely different from the album. If I want to hear the album, I'll hear the fucking album at home, through nice speakers. Why will I make the effort just to see what karaoke? That doesn't make sense. I want to see the mistakes. I want to see the songs for what they are in that moment, and they could be faster, slower. That's the magic of the live performance. So, and that's actually what I go for when I make a album also. I try to do it live. This album was obviously very different because it's mainly me, and it's just me. And a big uninspiring part of the whole process was that it's just boring. I like playing with other people. Magic happens when you play with other people, and there are other instruments, and you're playing for the moment. That's really hard to recreate. I tried to do it wherever I could for the songs definitely that needed it. And then there were some songs that I realized I couldn't do it, so they're treated completely differently. And now when I'm playing them now with the band, they're completely different, and it's amazing, and I like that. So yeah, to sum it up, wouldn't have made this album without Dear Miti.
Yeah, man. And I'm glad that you went on this journey with him because it led to such great and personal work of art, which I got a lot out of when I listened to. And so if this is really like, Miti's, last piece of work that he produced on before he passed, I think it's I think it's a great example of his work. I
Well,
mean,
he was, working on a lot of stuff before he passed. This is, I think, the last completed thing, but still in therapy, Signal W. I think he was also mixing some superfast stuff also, if you know about them.
hmm.
So um, they were works in progress. This one was the last one, it's done. But the thing is, we finished the album December last year, and actually, It took me so long just to get it out. Actually, everything was done. We had the masters in by Jan. and it was just sitting around. I was just trying to, I getting back into the scene and figuring out how to release the album, and had to ask help of friends in the industry to do it for me, who were sweet enough to do it for me. But it was a pain, man, to do it on my own, especially because I just don't have the time really to do this anymore with the job. So, yeah, but it is, it was, for the longest time, I it was going to be actually called Send Miti something, because it was both our albums, the way I looked at it, um, and still very much think it is our album. Uh, I've literally sat with him with the shell of a song, played it. He's played guitar, worked out stuff. I'd finish the song, I'd come, and then he would just record, and I'd just keep layering and playing and singing and building the songs. We'd be drinking an evening, and maybe after 5 whiskeys, be like, oh, let's fuck around and go. And there's the main guitar take on Here Comes the Wave. It's just one hammered guitar take, one night, just me and him having a few drinks, and just be like, let's go fool around. And yeah, that take is in there. So yeah, I've had a lot of good memories with him. My last memories really with him were just doing this intensely. Miti was a guy who wanted to always finish an album quickly. I think this is probably the longest album he's ever worked on. I mean, by the end, we were on mix 12, and we'd forgotten what we did in mix 3 because it was 6 years back. So, because we just start, stop, and, just we ourselves didn't know. And at the end of it, when I finally sat down to just finish it, I actually stripped it down and took off a lot of stuff because it became too grandiose, and too, it's when you have too much time with the song. There's too much. So I started taking things out, and we stripped it back actually. And yeah, and it was good in a way that gave me clarity, because I had so long to sit with the songs and, have them in my head.
Okay. Well, you know, Ananda, this has been such a, fascinating and sincere conversation for me. I really hope it has been as good for me, sorry, good for you as it has been for me. But, before I end this particular show, I'd like to play a little game with you. It's a recurring segment I have on the podcast. It's called Trivia Time. I'll ask you a couple of quick questions and you give me some quick answers. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. First question. When and where was your very first gig?
It was a real gig. Well, it was a backyard of one of my classmates of my first school band. There was a band called Hayes, I think class 7. We started a band. We called the class, the whole school for the gig. Everyone came to just have a laugh at us. We were probably shit, and they laughed at us. We felt like rock stars playing our favorite songs. Must have been 14, 15. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Um, Favorite and least favorite song from your catalog?
Well, least favorite is Yeah, Whatever, I can say. Um, I,
Oh no,
or
I really like that song. Ooh.
Everyone likes the song. Well, no surprise. Uh, Favorite. Oh, man, I don't know. Uh, I really favorite. I don't know. It's really hard for me to look at my own music like that. I just because I've seen given birth to it and played it 1,000 times. I can't really say I have a favorite. I think the one I'm writing right now is probably my favorite, and it's not done yet. But that's usually how it is. Once it's done, I think I like playing 170 live. I've always done. And so yeah, I think as a musical piece, and it's a dark song, and I feel that it captures all of that kind of, and it's a fun song to play live. It's hard to play live. but it's fun. So maybe today, tomorrow that could change.
Okay, okay. Favorite and least favorite part of playing live?
I think the least favorite part of playing live is dealing with all the other bullshit, money, you know, whatever the all the non-music stuff that goes behind playing a gig, hooking up the gig, tech writers, sound, worrying about payments, chasing payments. Well, now it's much better. Back in the day, it was way worse.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, best part of playing live is that you can never rehearse for what happens on the stage. You know, no matter how rehearsed you are, something can happen on the stage at any moment if the band's really locked in, which is magical and worth living for. And I think there's no greater high than that for sure. And that happens, I think, when the audience and the band, everyone becomes one and something happens there. And yeah, and there are moments where, on stage, you just become the vessel playing.
Okay, okay. Next, if you had to pick one song or album of yours with which to introduce someone to your music for the very first time, which song or album would you pick?
I mean, that's if I had to tell them, I mean, going by how people look at my music, I mean, everyone really loves maybe baking, so that, but if I personally, I would say heads up. As for a song, I really can't, all the songs are really different, and it's on any given day it would change, I think. Uh, yeah, I mean, sure, I would obviously point them out towards the ones that I know people like because, but then that's their perspective and not mine, so like everyone likes, yeah, whatever, and in memory of, but for me, they're like, meh, but I know if I had to ask them to listen to my music and get into it, I'd probably direct them to those. I mean, because those are the ones people like, I guess.
Okay, okay. If you could feature your music in any TV show or movie, which TV show or movie would you pick?
I wouldn't mind having a song in Squid Game.
Oh,
Yeah, especially for one of the games, if they could. Yeah, um,
yeah, that's a very fascinating choice.
yeah. It's rather dark and morbid also. So, so
Mm. Okay, all right. Who is your biggest inspiration as a musician?
I have a few, I would say. I would, I would obviously put up a Bob Dylan, a John Lennon, a Jerry Garcia, a Keith Richards up there, you know. Um, the Grateful Dead for me are the greatest rock and roll ensemble band ever. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones are the greatest pop rock bands, the Beatles being some of the greatest songwriters and pioneers, the Rolling Stones really being the ultimate blues rock band. Um, and Bob Dylan is just all of that and more. I think mainly because Dylan's a one man guy, if you think of it. I mean, he would really be up there. And lyrics are very important. I'm a man of words, so he'd be there. Garcia would be there. John Lennon would definitely be there. And I love Noel Gallagher also. He's a great fucking songwriter from our generation. Um, I think he's an amazing songwriter amongst the later ones. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, but really, yeah, John Lennon, Bob Dylan, Jerry Garcia, yeah, Keith Richards, sure, yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. If you could meet one of your inspirations and thank them personally for inspiring you, which person would you pick?
I mean, I wouldn't want to thank them. I just want to go hang out with them and pick their brains and maybe have a few drinks with them. So I picked the one who's probably be the most fun. I think I'd do that with the Jerry Garcia. I think he's a nice hippie head, little Santa looking guy, and quite looks quite jolly and lovely. I wouldn't mind hanging with him and really picking his mind because he has an intense mind, musicality and ideas. Yeah, definitely. I definitely picked Dylan's mind, but Dylan is notoriously cagey about people, and you won't get anything out of him. And I think it'd be rather boring experience of him not giving much. So they say never meet your heroes. So that's the other one.
What about any of the Gallaghers?
I'd love to go drinking with any of the Gallaghers any day. They're my kind of guys, man. For sure. I'd go rage it up with them for sure. Anytime.
The little sidebar. How did you react when the reunion got announced?
Oh, it's the fucking best news of the year. The world needs some real rock and roll. And done with all this pansy music, man. We need some like something straight from the gut. Like, we don't need like blistering solos. We just want good songs, good melody, good words. It's not that hard. I think we've lost the point somewhere. And to me, it shows. I mean, look at that's one of the greatest comebacks ever in the history of music, probably. And it's a time the world really needs it. We're in a world of Taylor Swift, man. I mean, she's fine, I guess, for that sort of music, but for people who want something more, or you know, I'm not so interested in someone bashing their exes constantly in their albums. To me, lyrically, that doesn't make much sense. I'd rather hear Idiot Wind if I want to hear something of that sort. Um, so, for me, actually, rock and roll's been fizzling out, and truth be told, I don't listen to much new music anymore. But, Oasis coming back, man, that was the best news of the decade for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So, getting back into it, what was the first rock song you ever heard?
Um, I mean, the one that I remember, and only because I used to get really scared and creeped out hearing it as a really small kid, is a song called Walking in the Wind by Traffic. I don't know if you've heard it. It's on the album Where the Eagle Flies. And it's got the intro's like this wind, bellowing wind, and it kind of fades in. It used to creep me out as a kid, and my dad's a music head, so I had a lot of great music playing. But I think that's my earliest rock and roll song, which really, well, I was scared of it. So and now it's one of my favorite songs. So
I had a very similar experience with the very first metal song I ever heard. I remember it clear as day. It was on a compilation CD that my uncle gave me, and I didn't know any of the bands on that CD. And the very first track was Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden.
yeah,
And I wasn't familiar with any of them. And then when I put it into the computer, because I was listening to it on the computer, the creepy voiceover like whoa to you oh earth and sea,
yeah,
and it really started scaring me. And then the opening notes and I was like holy shit, what's going on? And then Bruce Dickinson's vocals, I left alone, my time was blank, and I was like wondering what was going on. And then I remember it clear as day, the opening shriek, and I was like oh my god, and I literally went like this.
yeah.
Because it was like nothing I had ever heard before. So, and right now to my ears it's perfectly commonplace, but it's really funny, like the reactions some people can get to the first like balls to the wall rock song they've ever heard.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like rock and roll, it's just rock music, or at least guitar-driven music, I would say. It's really chasing an emotion. It's really the chords and the movements are really very simple, musically speaking. It's not that complicated. It's all really derivative of the blues, but It's the emotion, and whether that's emoted as metal, as punk rock, or as 80s pop, you know, you can take any song, any rock song, and treat it anyway. And a big part of me playing in the Supersonics was I write songs on an acoustic guitar, but the treatment of it when we play it as a band, it's open to interpretation. We've tried it. Let's do reggae, let's do punk rock, let's do jazz, let's do blues. Treat the same thing in different ways. A lot of that was that. So, and it's mainly to do with chasing the emotion, and guitar music does that. That's what I like, in music.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Next question. Which was the first band or artist t shirt you ever bought?
But you mean back in the day you couldn't get much here, truth be told? Um, I don't think I bought a band T-shirt. I don't have any really, for instance, right now. Uh, but I think my dad used to paint them for me, and he painted me the American Grateful Dead album cover, American Beauty, on a T-shirt.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and he was really good. I mean, at that stuff. So, I had a lot of T-shirts with album covers painted by him when I was a kid, and those were my band T-shirts. I never bought one really after that. Truth be told, I've been given some, over the years. So, yeah,
oh, that's sweet, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Next, dream collaboration, dream artist you would love to collaborate with.
Currently, like as in a
Yep.
current an artist who's around alive now.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a Noel Gallagher, Julian Casablancas, up to bands yeah, I think they've got really good musical heads. I mean, there's obviously the Stones and Dylan, but they're too old right now, and you know, it wouldn't. Yeah, but I mean, definitely a Noel Gallagher for sure. Julian Casablancas, I've, he does a lot of collaborative work, and he's worked with all sorts, and he's really good with melody and words, and you know he always seems to know a good hook. That's all good songwriters. They know how to write a good melody and a good hook, and really making the most of it, whether it's building up to the hook with an amazing melody and amazing lyrics, or musically doing something to really make the hook shine. They're both masters at it. So yeah, I mean, oh, they're also pretty old right now. So I mean, but
Hmm.
yeah, I guess my contemporaries almost they're older than me, but sure.
Oh, great choice. Great choice. And lastly, I mean, I know you've said before that this is not exactly what you aspire to at this stage in your life, but dream gig you would love to attend or perform at. This could be a festival or like a particular bill with any musicians that you like.
You know, here's the truth. Nowadays, you go to all these big concerts, everyone's looking at the concert through their fucking phone. I mean, I see videos from the 90s where the audience is in with the band, it's straight, there's no screen. I, I look at festivals nowadays and none of them really, it's more the spectacle. That's the music is really not that. I would love to have played the acid test with the Grateful Dead. I think that is a
Hmm.
platform where the art form gets to shine. It's not about showbiz, and the people and the audience are very much one. And I think that's when musical magic really happens. I think the big stadiums and stuff, those are really impersonal to play. Um, on stage, people just look like dots, and I like an intimate nice sounding venue and an environment where I think taking risks is encouraged and non-confirmation is what everyone is looking for. So, it would be something like that. Maybe the acid test.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so Ananda, thank you so much for your time and energy, particularly through the technical breaks. And I really feel that I have more of a connection to your music now after this conversation. Now that I understand what your journey is and where you were coming from, and whatever your outlook may be on live music or music in general at this point, I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Bandland and Lolla, and I really hope that an entirely new generation discovers your music through these two performances, man. I mean this from the heart. This has been
Thank
a really special
you.
conversation.
No, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy that, you guys actually take the time and make content around this stuff. Like I said, for a scene to happen, it takes everyone, man, from the musicians to the guys covering the music, whether it's now podcasts, vlogs. So thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, it has been wonderful for me as well. And everyone, if you like this conversation, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Follow Ananda Sen on, I think, you're only on Instagram at this point, right?
Yeah, I have Facebook also.
Okay, so follow Ananda on Facebook and Instagram. Catch his music wherever you can find it. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back soon.
Cheers. Thanks.